everyone. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at dictionaries in Python. Now, dictionaries are interesting because they almost think they're lists, but they almost kind of think that they're tuples. You'll see exactly what I mean. Dictionaries have a lot of really powerful uses, especially because they take up less memory than our good friends lists because of the way they're designed. Let's take a look at it. Now, if you're familiar with lists, we get something that looks like this. We'll say cars. We'll say, you can see in the bottom me fiddling earlier, we'll say Ferrari F40, one of my favorite cars ever, and we'll do Ford Focus because reasons. And of course, as you're familiar with, whenever we're working with our good friends lists, if we want to print an item out of the list, we simply come in here and say print cars. We want the first item, for example. We go ahead and play that, and you can see I got myself a nice handy dandy Ferrari F40. Now, these lists are great because at any time we can add something to lists. You can come in here and do cars.append, and now we can add another car here. Let's see here. Oh, too bad. We're doing Ford Mustang now. And now, of course, I've got one more item ready to go inside of that list. And of course, as we increase the number of items, the value, the index, I should say, continues to increase as well, making things a little bit challenging because when we have 6,000 items in there, we don't exactly know. Now, let's create an interesting problem. Let's say we have a customer. Now, there's a lot of different details we could store with customers, of course, or if we want to do users or something like that. Maybe we want to go ahead and create a list of users with their password that they need to use, for example. So you end up doing something like this. Let's see, Luke. Let's see here. We'll say Perry, and we'll say Della, kind of a thing like that. Now, what we want to do is we want to pair each one of these with their specific password. So you're sitting here going, I can think of a way to do that. I could do something like this. I could do users equals, we can make a list. I'll do Luke, luck, that's kind of funny. And then we'd say his password is XYZ. Then, of course, you'd sit over here and do a comma. You'd do create another list. Oh, my goodness, this is getting complicated quickly. And Perry, we'll do Mason because reasons. We'll come down here, comma, and I will say, I'll make another list. I'll call this one Della, and of course, you know what the password is for this one's going to be. And we end up with something that looks like that. Now, you're like, this is fine. If I want to get the user's password, all I have to do is I have to go do something like this. You'd say if users of 0, which would be Luke, of the password value, which would be, actually, this would be 0 of 0, which is the user. And then, of course, we'd have to do 1. That would be the password equals password, blah, 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 kind of thing like that. That's awfully messy. And when I mean messy, I mean really messy. And especially as you start adding all different fields to it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just directly call these things? And that's where dictionaries kick in. A dictionary is a key value pair. A key is basically going to be whatever we're going to link the value that it's going to be inside of. For example, let's recreate that again. I'm going to type in users, and I'm going to go ahead and declare this as a dictionary by using a left carriage brace, aka squiggly bracket. And what I'm going to do is the same thing I did before. I'm going to do Luke, colon, and I'm going to do my password. I'll go ahead and do a comma here. We'll add a second item to our dictionary. What do we say? I think we said Perry here. Of course, his password is going to be Mason. And of course, Della here is going to be street. So that's going to be our password. Now, you'll notice that we've got a couple different things going on here. Screaming at me. It's like, why'd you put a space there? I guess technically in this version of PEP, we're supposed to do it this way. That's okay. No, does not matter. Let me see here. What are you complaining about? Are we supposed to put a space there? I don't know why they change that all the time. I don't care. So one of the things we can do now is we can actually access this value by looking at this value. Let me show you. For example, if I wanted to print users instead of 0, I'm going to print users of Luke. Now watch what happens when I run my code here. You will see here that instead of getting the word Luke, we now have the value XYZ because this is now the key. This is now our value. Now, if I did that again, for example, if I did print users of Perry and came in here like that, we got to be careful when I type things in, however. Go ahead and press run. You will notice here it says Mason because it went into my dictionary, looked up this key, and then brought this element up as well. And you're like, oh, that's actually pretty darn handy. We could have made that really easy when we did our little if business. You know, you could have said if whatever equals of that password. And you could start to see the immediate benefit of dictionaries. Now, dictionaries have other benefits too. For example, if we wanted to add something to a dictionary, all we would do is we simply type in the name of the dictionary, give ourselves a square bracket, define the key. Let's see here. This will be Paul this time. And all we have to do now is go ahead and set what it is equal to. So in this case, if I wanted to create a new item in my dictionary called Paul and set it equal to Drake, all I have to do is type in that particular code itself. Now, the reason this gets so wild, if I were to go print my users real quick, not users, run that sucker real fast, you can see that my Paul Drake is now chilling there right at the end. Now you're sitting here going, okay, I like that. I like that a lot. That's not bad. I can work with that. I can work with that. That's slick. I like where you're going with that. What else can you do with it? Well, there's a lot of other things you can do with it, and we're going to save some of that for the next video, just on account of the fact that it gets a little complicated, as you'll probably see when I start running through those last couple pieces. But there's a couple things we could do. For example, we can determine if something is inside of a dictionary. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. Now, you're sitting here going, I want to print everything in a dictionary. So you do something like this. You type for item, or actually for user and users, and we want to print user. You want to do one of these things, and you run your code. And when you do this, of course, what you'll observe here is we get each one of the keys in the dictionary. We don't get the actual value. We don't get the value. We only get the keys. So you're sitting here going, oh, that's kind of a pain in the butt. Is there a way we can go ahead and get just the items in there? And the answer is absolutely. There's actually several different ways of doing it. One thing we can do is, if we want to be a little meta, is we could actually come in here and say user of user. We could say users of user. Now, the reason this works is, remember, this is going to get us each one of the keys. And this, of course, since we're going into the dictionary each time, is going to go ahead and grab us each one of those items. So if I run it now, you can actually see all of the passwords, because I'm basically using this to iterate through the keys, and I'm using this to grab the value out of it. So using the key that I'm iterating through. Now, that's a little goofy. Now, the cool thing is they actually have a built-in method to basically make this a little bit easier. If we were to come to our dictionary, for example, and come in here and type in .keys, you'll notice we have a keys, and we also have an items. So now if I run through this one, what you'll observe here is it's actually going to give us each one of the items inside of our actual dictionary here. It actually breaks it through. And you'll also notice we've got those distinctive parentheses, which means we're in tuple territory. So these are all nice and immutable, make our lives a little bit simpler. And you can see just how effective that is. Now, I know you're sitting here going, okay, so this is basically a bunch of tuples. What if I just want the first part? Well, then you could just simply come in here and call it from that moment. Again, remember, since returning a tuple, we can simply grab the first item of that tuple using whatever address it is. If I want to go here and give me item 1, it's going to give me a list of the passwords again, just to give you an idea of what you can do with that very, very quickly and very, very easily. Obviously, if I want to just print user, it's going to give us that nice little list of our tuples here once more. Now, you're sitting here going, this is actually pretty cool. I could definitely see plenty of uses for why I want to use something other than using 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can call it anywhere, anytime, anywhere, kind of a thing like that. But it gets cooler than that, because one of the things you could do is you could change items in dictionaries very easily, just like we did with lists. For example, if I want to change users of, we'll take Luke here. We're going to go and change it, his name, or we're going to change his password to ABC, for example. Now, if I were to come down here and print users of Luke, I know it feels weird when you do it this way, you will notice that instead of having the XYZ password they had earlier, we have overwritten the value. So now we have ABC as our new value for that particular position. And again, you can see how quick and how powerful that is. Now, of course, deleting things out of a lovely dictionary here is a little interesting. We have to actually use something called del, which is short for delete. So if I, for example, wanted to delete Paul Drake here, I could actually type in del, left parentheses, and I'd have to type in that particular item. So in this case, I come in here and say delete users Paul. Now, if I were to print my users one more time, just like this, you'll notice that our good friend Paul Drake and his value associated with him have both basically been eliminated there. So you can see that that has been popped out like that. There's other things we can do, of course, with the dictionary. I remember the way that these are kind of shaped is we don't have the ability to, for example, grab things by index or anything like that. We have to refer to it specifically. Now, one of the things you're probably curious about is what we can use as an index. And this is where things get interesting. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say we want to create a users of 0, and we just want to set this equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. Now, the cool thing is if I come in here and I print my users dictionary, what you're going to observe here is this is an integer that I'm utilizing for my index. And you're also probably noticing that the value associated with that integer is our lovely 1, 2, 3, 4. But you'll notice that this sucker is a string. Now you're sitting there going, wow, that's actually pretty cool because, I can just go ahead and define something as a number. I could use a for loop and add a bunch of values to it that are random and pull them out. Yeah, absolutely, you can do that. Where it starts to get kind of fun, though, is when you want to get a little more extreme with the value itself. So let's go ahead and create users of obnoxious example. And let's go ahead and set this equal to a tuple. Let's see, all right, we're going to do a tuple here containing 5, 3, 2. It's also going to create a list of doodad and hodad. That sounds pretty good to me. Now, if I were to go ahead and print users of obnoxious example, just for the purposes of what I'm doing here, what you'll observe is just like our good friend lists, we can actually get all these values. So I have a dictionary that contains a tuple that also contains a list of strings. Now that is what I call an obnoxious example. And the interesting thing is this whole guy actually uses less room than a standard list because all the values in a dictionary are basically going to be consecutive inside of memory, making things a little bit cheaper for us. We're not being constantly running around and creating new ones and things like that like we do with lists, which is, again, one of the reasons why it's so helpful. Now, one really, really cool thing we'll go ahead and leave with before we get to sort of the like I said, I'll say that for the next video, is sort of the silly stuff you can do with dictionaries here, is a quicker way to go ahead and iterate through items. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and say for k comma v in users. Now, one of the cool things here is if you remember ages ago when we did our for loops here, we actually could go ahead and for more than one thing at a time. Now, when you say k comma v, if we print this, watch this. You will observe it's going to give us a big, angry message. And the reason it's going to give us an angry message here is because there is no way to do that inside of our dictionaries directly. But if you remember a minute ago, we can get the items of a dictionary as a nice, neatly formatted tuple, which now means if we iterate through those using 2 different elements, we can get the key and the value just like that. Enjoy.